Okay, let's talk about the $100 elephant in the room, because the internet is wrestling with a rumor that feels rather shocking that Grand Theft Auto 6 may launch with a $100 RRP price tag, right? That's the box price of the game. And your gut reaction is probably the same as mine. That's bullshit. That's too much. And that is fair. But this story actually goes a bit deeper than just the sticker shock, because we've actually been here before. Back in 2023, there were unsubstantiated rumors that had people worried about a $150 price point for GTA 6. Now, that did obviously not materialize, but this time it's based on an analyst sharing his TLDR of private discussions that he says are actually happening amongst people in the AAA sector. $150 was obviously absurd, but $100, well, that's not really as absurd, especially coming from Take-Two Interactive. So the anxiety that people have is not a baseless thing, and again, that is Take-Two's fault, but not just what they're known for recently, like say Grand Theft Auto 5 not having narrative DLC because it doesn't pay in comparison to shark cards, the Zynga acquisition, horrible sports game monetization, and all of that stuff. No, it's because Take-Two are the very company who led the charge on the increase from $60 to $70 as the AAA standard. But here's where it gets more complicated. You and I may be adamantly opposed to paying $100, but many people obviously are not, because deluxe edition, season passes, premium bundles, all of those things. We also all know the AAA budgets are kind of ballooning, and it's not just the big evil corpo types that are saying this. This is a pretty glib tweet that came from Larian's publishing director. Obviously, he's poking the thing with a stick, but he did tweet, "You're not supposed to say this out loud." The point is, actually, this is kind of what they're all thinking. So let's get into the story. What kicks it off is this. It's Matthew Ball's State of Gaming 2025 report, and it suggests that some players in the industry are quietly hoping for Rockstar to break the $70 ceiling. Of course, not just for themselves, but to trigger an industry-wide price reset, basically pushing $50 up to $60, $60 to $70, all the way up the chain. And this is obviously not just analyst speculation. Whenever Larian's publishing director effectively, confirmed it with a cheeky, "You're not supposed to say that out loud," he was really just reiterating a point that he also made last August when he talked about rising development costs and inflation as well. But of course, he gets to say that from the position of selling people Baldur's Gate 3. That's a game with such an absurd value proposition that it still has 24-hour peaks of 75k on Steam. I mean, if you were to pay $100 for Baldur's Gate 3, but you're still playing it a year and a half on, that's certainly more value than most AAAs are giving you. But it's not just him. This point is cropping up everywhere. As an example, Capcom's president just recently at Tokyo Game Show talked about development costs exploding, quote, 100 times higher since the Famicom days. Now, obviously, this was not him saying, games cost $50 in the Famicom, okay, we need to charge people $5,000 for games. No, he's not saying that, because games sell so many more copies now, but there is a point there that he's making, and it's rather funny considering one of the older rumors, because paying $50 for a game in 1985 is the equivalent of $145.70 in today's money, which, funnily enough, is near that original GTA rumor and is not so far away from some digital collector's editions. To take it to Grand Theft Auto then, it's going to be one of the most expensive games ever made. It will be absurdly huge. Some people will say that that justifies a price hike, that this is basically Rockstar's excuse to nudge everything up by $10 for the whole industry. But Grand Theft Auto is not your typical game. Rockstar is operating in a completely different universe. Their shark card revenue is so substantial that another analyst, Daniel Ahmad, suggests that actually they could lower the price point of GTA 6 just for the sake of building up the GTA Online player base to sell more shark cards. The point basically is they're in that rare tier along with Call of Duty where they can just spend $700 million in a game and be completely justified. We actually covered it in this video a little bit ago. Now, no one seriously thinks that Grand Theft Auto needs to be $100 a pop to be financially viable. But what we all do, I think, trust is Take-Two's desire for more money, because obviously they want that, and the industry's desire for Take-Two to be the thin end of the wedge, for them to take the hit so everybody else can charge $80 without having a PR shitstorm. And that's a justified worry because it happened before. You know, it really is remarkable how quickly the $70 price point solidified, and when that happened, Take-Two led the charge. Then PlayStation's first-party titles followed suit, and the strategy was pretty damn simple. They used next-gen consoles as their cover for the increase, and even Nintendo eventually joined in. They leveraged as well Tears of the Kingdom's massive hype to push their own prices up. But actually, here's where it gets kind of interesting. Not everybody could even make that work. Take Redfall, right? It completely face-planted at $70. Let's be real, it would have face-planted at just about anything else. But I bring it up because when analysts started to notice quick discounts on $70 games, they questioned Strauss Zelnick. Strauss is, by the way, the CEO of Take-Two. He's quite the fellow, sort of vampire daddy energy. Anyway, his response was rather telling. He said, "We're not seeing pushback." Now, the emphasis on "we're" is on our half, or our behalf, right? So it's not like he said, well, we aren't seeing a pushback, but literally he did say, we're not seeing a pushback. And I think there's a big point there. The reality is that certain publishers like Take-Two, like Capcom, PlayStation, they can command those prices because of their track record and game quality. I mean, Monster Hunter Wilds, that's gonna share the same RRP as Redfall, which is a bit ridiculous when you think about them. Actually, this has gotten to the point where Saber Interactive's CEO, when talking about Space Marine 2, said that they actually felt they had to price their game at $70 because they feared that players would see anything lower as a red flag for quality. And his point actually does make sense for consumer psychology. In a world where an audience expects $70, if you publish your game at $60, people will then assume that that's you admitting that you're actually not able to command what the industry now sees as a full price. Right, so it is basic sales psychology here. Now, yes, in a world where every customer is a fully informed, dispassionate, rational actor, well, I think the entire global economy would look rather different. The reality is, we're humans, we're emotional, we're not always rational, and we are prone to fun psychological biases. So in a world with a $70 standard, if one game is $60, people will begin to think, why is it $60? There must be a reason why it's not the default. That deviation, well, that adds in some ambiguity, and that means you're less likely to make the sale. And the upshots are fascinating. Capcom are going to make more money than ever with the new Monster Hunter, but we are seeing these discounts being piled on faster than ever. But a 20% discount on a $70 game is actually more revenue than a 20% discount on a $60 game, but it still has the psychological benefits of a 20% discount. So it still works, and this serves to defend everybody's margin within the industry, which certainly goes back to Matthew Ball's point about the whole industry wanting a $10 increase to cascade up. But actually, there's something we've missed. We're already well past $70. It's time to enter the big think dimension. So, do you value something objectively, right, based on its input costs plus some margin? Or do you think something is valued based on what someone in the real market is willing to pay for it? I'd say that at the very least for things that we experience like art, it's the latter, right? That's why millions of people buy games above that $69.99 RRP. The $100 price tag that kicked off this whole discussion has already happened. It just has happened indirectly because you see that $10 price rise from $60 to $70? Well, $69.99 of today's dollars is in fact worth $57.75 in 2020's dollars. Yeah, inflation's a bitch. That's why Space Marine 2 had masses of people paying $30 extra to have some cosmetics, and I think most importantly, advanced access. Just about every major game these days does advanced access. Obviously, it's more money, because with it, publishers have found their workaround. They know that people who buy a game on day one are price insensitive compared to the average customer, because they're the people who still buy games on day one with full knowledge that deep discounts still do happen in the industry. And that means that they are the very people who you can laser target with premium advanced access. And in a way, we know part of the reason why. Budgets are indeed exploding. Spider-Man 1 was said to cost like $100 million. Its sequel, that came out just 5 years later, cost $315 million. which, by the way, you can't just put down to inflation. It's also an industry-wide trend that I'll be diving into soon on the channel. But for now, I want you to check this out. This is from Matthew's report, and it's the RRP of Grand Theft Auto games from 1997, and it shows nominal price and inflation-adjusted price. It's kind of funny because Grand Theft Auto 1 would cost $100 in today's money. It almost fits the story too well. But if you look at this graph, you see that it actually does not tell the full story, not even close, because it would be disingenuous to look at that and think, oh, Strauss Zelnick and the lovely people at Take-Two Interactive have protected me against inflation by not hiking their prices even more. That is obviously not the case because that's not their business model. To just take that chart would be to omit shark cards and everything else that goes on. Because the move from 60 to 70 was not enough. It was just part of a whole stack of measures to increase revenue per customer without going so hard that it sparks deep outrage. But here's the thing, this distortion will hurt them. And within Matthew's report is a rather shocking thing about consumer spending. By now, I think most of us agree that a $100 RRP largely wouldn't work because customers would just reject it and wouldn't see it as a good value. And that's because the large upfront purchase is the more psychologically expensive way to get some money. That's why you've got the upcharges and the microtransactions growing over time. Those are just little cuts here and there. So not only is this, for all of the reasons that we know, but there's a deeper hidden sort of reason and risk here. And it's one we're about to face. Imagine Grand Theft Auto 6 ends up costing $80. Now compare that to, say, some skin bundles. It's the cost of a few skins for a Grand Theft Auto. Now for Grand Theft Auto, Daniel Ahmad is right. The RRP tweaks that Take-Two can make will pale in comparison to shark cards over the life of that game. And that brings me to the big risk here. Our perception of value. Because when you can buy a game that costs over $500 million to make for the price of a few skins in some other game, what does that say about value? What are we paying for? Are we even paying for content now? And here's the data to ram that home. This is worldwide consumer spending in real terms. That's the killer, in real terms. And what we see is that even with games as money desperate as they seem to be in many cases, the spending is shockingly flat. RRP matters less. But if you look at all of the money that's being spent, well, it's not massively growing, and what you basically realize is the money being spent is going less and less into content, and more into upcharges and microtransactions. It seems that, again, in real terms, everybody is fighting for a roughly similar number of dollars, your dollars, and that pool of dollars doesn't seem to be going up as quickly as game budgets are, which means that, well, on balance, more of those dollars are going into what I would call low-value upcharges like skins and not game content, which is a problem if you're here for actual video games. Now to bring it back to Larian, Baldur's Gate 3 is not full of upcharges and bullshit. The $70 games that it competes against, though, often are full of that bullshit. And of course, those are, the big traditional AAA publisher titles that set expectations industry-wide. $70 works for them, right? Those big AAAs, because they can monetize in so many other ways, with your advanced access, all of your different bundles and your currencies and all of that stuff. But if you're fighting those companies to make a AAA quality game, like say Larian would be doing, and you're targeting $70, but you're foregoing all of the other ways that those companies earn money on top of the $70, then you are at a disadvantage for not taking up those tactics, and that's bad. Even beloved games like Space Marine 2 feel the need to do the very expensive premium advanced access. And that's the real point here. The unit economics, the business models, those shape what sorts of games get made. And that matters if you care about games as an art form. I mean, that's why Grand Theft Auto 5 did not have narrative DLC. And looking around the industry, it's probably why we've seen a string of AAA single-player narrative studios die. It's why back in the day, we would actually get plenty of narrative DLCs for games, but nowadays, that just doesn't really seem to be the thing that happens anymore. What's harder, spending untold millions for the chance to sell a new creative $70 game, or just pumping out more $15 to $25 skins to sell to the people you already know you have in the game you've already made? So I guess the question then is, What's going to happen? Well, first, I hate to break it to you, but I can't tell the future. What I will say is I don't think the Grand Theft Auto 6 will cost $100, but I think the Early Access Edition might. And it will probably be, the most hyped game for at least a lot of people of this entire decade. So if they do decide to, say, have a $30 more expensive Advanced Access Day 1 edition, yeah, it'll cost $100 for sure. Now, if the game ended up having an $80 RRP, right, a $10 increase, that wouldn't really surprise me. Industry-wide, though, would the AAAs like $100? Would they be happy with $80? Yeah, absolutely. But here's the real point and the disingenuous thing that I see. Yes, industry-wide, the AAAs would love $100, they love $80, they love anything that goes up. And in so many cases, the prime argument will be inflation eroding the dollar, so the prices got to go up. And to a degree, yeah, there's a fair argument there. But it does miss other factors that matter. How much are we paying for their own failures of efficiency, their own cost controls, their own stupid bets on 6-year massive live service titles that cost stupid millions of dollars like Suicide Squad, just as one example. And most importantly of all, how, yes, they may say, well, gamers, back in 2008, if you spent $60 in a game, that's like 87.40 of today's dollars, so you should be paying $90 for a game today. So, do you know what that doesn't really get? Number one, we could talk about median wages not keeping up with inflation, but we could also talk about how, back in 2008, when I bought a game, by and large, I bought the whole game, and that was kind of that. Nowadays, that same amount of money, that $69.99, it's getting you a game, but it's also getting you a gateway to a digital storefront that wants even more money. So yes, inflation has happened, but let's not pretend that that's the only thing that's going on within the games that we're being asked to buy. And look, it's fun to shot call, it's fun to analyze. The thing I care about at the end of the day, the most, is that we get good games that have got like real value as like bits of art, bits of experience, the sorts of things that leave players better than they found them, not just kind of infinite Skinner box slop games. And more, I think the unit economics of the business are not supporting that. So caring about games as a medium, I do see this as really quite a depressing risk. That being said, there's a AAA company on our radar who are very much planning to make, well, the sorts of games that we would want succeed. They're called Remedy, and to understand that story and the context of exploding game budgets, check out this video next.